Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, today's going to be an awesome interview. We're going to be talking about stuff that you probably never heard about, or you might have heard about it on TV. We're going to be talking about drug cartels. We're going to be talking about sin, and we're going to be talking about redemption with my brother Hal. Amazing, amazing friend, amazing brother in Christ. I was just on his show, and now he's getting a chance to be on our show. Guys, and if you stay till the end of this show, it might save you eternally. So
Yes.
stay till the end of the show, and I think we have something special for you at the end of the show. And I got to give a big shout out to Mr. Pete Turner. Without us, without him, we would not be together. We would not be doing what we're doing together. I love you, Pete. Thank you, my
I,
brother.
I love you too, Pete. And by the way, folks, Pete is the host and creator of the Break It Down show. And he's got a couple thousand episodes out there. And the man is just an amazing orator. And I hope you guys get a chance to see his show also. And Richard, good morning, brother. Thank you for having me on your show today.
Good morning, Doc. Well, first question I'm going to have right out of the gate is, what is your definition of resiliency?
That's a very good question. My definition of resiliency is a commitment and a determination to come out with a positive end result. That to me is the focus of my topics on both my show and the shows that I go on, such as yours, Richard. I think that it's critically important that people such as ourselves that have lived extraordinary lives, uh, we need to share not only the bad part of it, but the result of good and humane aspects that are culminated as a result of experiencing such background lifestyles like you know about mine. My years in the Sinaloa drug cartel, later going to federal prison and being recruited by the Department of Justice, spending 17 years undercover, operating in multiple foreign countries, and on that basis, entering my seminarial years of studies. I was formally ordained February 3rd, 1993, in Seattle, Washington, by Bishop Simi de la Fall. I'm still connected and affiliated to the church 26 years later. It's just amazing. And I work, as you know, in the homeless community. I work in trap houses. I work in camps. I work with people being delivered to my own residence here in the town that I live in. And this is just my payback, trying to make right the wrongs, if you will. And Richard, that's what I was hoping that we could really convey in our topic today, this discussion. Um, with your permission, I can give a brief rundown of my past and what cultivated into the servitude that I've now spent the last quarter of a century being focused on.
Yeah, Doc, definitely. Give us a quick down and dirty about who you are, where'd you come from, and how did you become such a force like you are today?
Uh, well, thank you for that, Richard. And may God get the glory, not us, ever.
Amen.
Um, my story starts in 1969. I was in high school in Edmonds, Washington, just north of Seattle. And myself and two of my friends got caught smoking a cigarette on campus. And back in the 60s, when you got caught doing something like that, they kicked you out for a semester. Well, my mother didn't want to have her son running around. I had a brother in Vietnam at the time. My mother was a single woman raising three other children at home while John was over there fighting the war. And she had a friend that owned a mining corporation down in central Mexico. So he consented to take me down to Mexico, set me up in this mining camp, and let me have a cultural experience, if you will. So my mother agreed to it. I was packed up and taken down to Durango, Mexico, which is a centralized state in the country of Mexico. And where I was at, the camp was bordered along the Zacatecas border, another state just above us. So when I arrived to Walterio, Durango, Mexico, I was taken to a very impoverished village of maybe no more than 200 to 250 people that resided there at that time. Now, bear in mind, this is the 1960s. The only power pole they had ran through the town, which ran up to the mining camp where I was at, working in for the Anaconda de Mexico Corporation. The mine was mainly set up to extract silver and zinc products. That was the functioning purpose. But in fact, it was actually a front operation for mass producing heroin and marijuana from the Chawari Indian villages encamped above the camp. My mother was unaware of any of that. I want to make that absolutely clear. She just thought that I was going down to Mexico, that I would be in an isolated environment, and this would afford me an opportunity to learn about another cultural existence. And that's all well and good, but when I arrived in Walterio, when got taken up to the mining camp and situated with my own room, I was also given my own transportation, was a burro that I named Pepito. And in the daytime, I would ride on the back of my burro, and I would start learning about the mountain trails and the canyon trails and all of that stuff by myself. And bear in mind, I'm 15 years old. I'm just a kid, and I'm in an impressionable age in life. And I'm fascinated by and intrigued by all these new and exciting things. And I had a private bodyguard that was hired to protect me while I was in country named Memo, and may he rest in peace. And Memo was he was in organized crime. He was very, very connected, an extremely dangerous man, but took a liking to this young blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid back in '69 almost instantly. We really hit it. Well, months went by, time developed. I was in country about 3 months when I witnessed an execution. Memo and I were in the cafeteria having breakfast, and this guy walks in, and there was a man sitting across from me on the side table over here by me, and the guy walked up to him and put a gun to his head and blew his brains out right in front of me. Now, bear in mind, you're 15 years old. You're out of just north of Seattle, Washington. The worst and most horrific violence I had ever seen was a fist fight at a cake party on a Friday night, that kind of stuff. So this was really mesmerizing and almost surreal, if you want. I can still remember it absolutely clearly. And of course, over the years and being connected to the cartels, I've witnessed, well, actually, probably more executions than I can even count at this point in my life. But getting back to the story, I remember Memo taking the guy out of the cafeteria and having a talk with him, and then opened the door and flagged for me to come out. And he says, whatever you see here, son, don't ever, ever let anybody in the United States know about what you're exposed to. This is a different culture. It's a whole different society than what you understand. And I don't ever want anything that you learn in this village to ever be released anywhere. And up until 6 years ago, when I started writing my action adventure novels and my autobiography and doing the work to honor law enforcement and military agencies that serve our country, I never said a word about that, and many, many other things. So over the course of the next year, I started acquiring a friendship with, I don't want to say the name of the organized crime family, but I do want it to be known that I made a friendship with a person who later became very, very famous in the drug world. And we spent the rest of that year getting to know each other quite well. And when I got word about John being shot in action in Vietnam, I immediately headed back home. I remember going to the Bremerton Hospital and looking at my brother on that ward and all those other young, brave soldiers that were, with various medical combat related injuries. And I was angry, very, very angry, seeing my brother, who had been my idol, my hero, my whole life, laying in that bed and looking at all those other men. I can't describe the emotions that went through me. And so I went to Edmonds Community College, got my GED, and on November 7th of 1971, I entered the United States Army. I was 2 weeks after I turned 17, so I was very young. And I headed to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and did my basic there. And then from there, Knox, huh? Yeah.
Fort Knox, 1986. Yes, that was me.
Yeah, 71, 72. But then I went from there to Fort Polk, Louisiana. And at this time, Vietnam was going on real strong. And they had this place on our base called Tigerland. And that's where I was sent to. In Tigerland, you learned extensive training about escape and evasion tactics. We actually had simulated prisoner of war camp training, which, as you know, I was later captured in life. And that really came into play at that time. But we had special weapons qualifications, learned all kinds of stuff, but mainly jungle survival tactics and combat related tactics while in the jungle environment. Fort Polk, Louisiana was a alligator and snake ridden environment, really, probably pretty compliant to the Vietnam type of environment that we were soon to be heading into. Now, bear in mind, during the time that I went through Tigerland, they had a specific program set up where they were bringing trainers out of Vietnam to specifically train us. So we have these guys that haven't even been back in the United States 30 days, and they're still got that combat environment in their mindset. And so when they put us through the training, it was very rigorous. And I remember after my cycle that Congress actually shut down the Tigerland program, if you will, that I was on. And there's a movie out there called Tigerland. It's exactly made at the same time that I was in Tigerland. And I would really behoove your audience to see it. So they would have an understanding of the mindset being created for younger people such as myself that would be soon expectedly heading into combat. Well, one thing led to another. I finished my AIT there, graduated out of Tigerland, and decided I wanted to be a paratrooper. So my next stop was Fort Benning, Georgia. And here I am. I'm barely 17 and a half years old. And I go through 0 week, ground week, tower week, jump week. And of course, on the 4th week, you get your 5 jumps in, and then you get your wings pinned on your chest. So I'm not even 18 years old. I'm already a paratrooper. I have all of this discipline and background embedded within me that would later, as I entered into a criminal lifestyle, really come into play. I understood the chain of command. I understood how to do a risk assessment for my own salvation and preservation while being in a hostile related environment. Now, fortunately for me, I didn't end up in Vietnam at Fort Dix, New Jersey. I was put on a transport plane and I was flown to Frankfurt, Germany, where I ended up from, I did late 1972 to March of 74 when I ETS'd out of there. So now I'm back stateside. I'm going through the VA hospital. I had a related injury from a parachute fall, and I'm at Presidio, San Francisco, and then I go to Martinez VA hospital where I spent about a month there, and then I was discharged out. Right away, I used my GI Bill and get enrolled in Sacramento City College in the city of Sacramento. I didn't go back to Washington at that time and actually spent 16 years in California. But when winter break came in the winter of 74, I had a 2-week vacation. I decided to go down to the village and see people that I had thought about over the years and had missed. And so I made this journey down to Walterio, Durango, Mexico. And immediately, I was confronted by the whole village. I mean, they got together within the next day and put this big festival together. And lo and behold, my friend now actually working for his family. And bear in mind, cartels were not invented at this time. These are still organized crime syndicates. And this particular very famous family, he's now 4 years older, as am I, and we're at that age of, I was disciplined by my military training. He was disciplined by his criminal organization training. So what they did was they said, why don't you bring down a specific type of car, and we've got a chop shop. We can put these compartments in it. We'll start loading you up with marijuana and sending marijuana stateside. Now, this is probably December, January, 74, 75. So I went back to campus, and right after that, I waited till spring break. But then by then, I was ready to go. And I even recruited a couple of friends of mine on campus during that time, telling them that if this works, we ought to look at getting your cars down there and bringing more marijuana north. So I headed down there at spring break and gave them the car. They put it into a chop shop. They put the packages in it. And bear in mind, it could only hold 80 kilos of marijuana, but 80 kilos. And at that time, my friend and I bought the kilos together, and we paid $20 a kilo for this marijuana coming out of the Chouari Indian village. $20. Once we got it back into the States, we were getting $650 a pound. So that's $1,300 a kilo on a return of $20 investment, plus gas, meals, the cost of transport, which was nothing. So I head up north. I'm taking Highway 15 to Highway 2, entering into Nogales Crossing. And they had instructed me and trained me how to hit a border crossing at that time and how to successfully pass through it. One, I would spray deodorant on any exposed facial skin, my hands, arms, all of that. This way you don't sweat by accident. That can trigger off an agent who is trained specifically to look at your neurolinguistic approach to coming through the questions that they're going to answer you. Now, I'm 20 years old. I'm still a young buck, and I remember approaching the 28-kilometer zone, which is 28 kilometers before you hit the U.S. Customs border. And you have a turista sticker on your car because you're coming in out of the interior. No problem. All they're doing is basically signing it off to make sure you weren't down there selling off your vehicle or whatever. There was no history background on me whatsoever, so I was flagged right on through immediately. Once I hit Nogales, I scraped off that turista sticker because they don't have a record in that time of knowing that I had just come out of the interior. So I looked like nothing more than a regular tourist that had came across for the afternoon and was heading back stateside. I was also instructed to watch the crossing sites right at the shift change and to see the one flagging most of the people through to get into that lane and use that as my exit point. So I go there and I remember well, it's my first time I ran across the border. I had 80 kilos in the car and I rolled the window down and I'm looking directly at the guy. I'm not wavering at all as I was taught and instructed. I wore sunglasses, but they weren't dark. They weren't too light. I was driving a car that wasn't too old, but wasn't too new. I had a piñata and I think a couple bottles of mezcal in the backseat. I can't really remember now, but it was liquor. And I remember the guy leaning into my car, looking in the backseat, asking me a few specific questions. Never took my eyes off him as I was taught and stayed calm and focused on the questions. And within seconds, I was processed on through. So now I'm in the state of Arizona and I'm really excited, man. I mean, I just made my first border crossing and this is a big thing to a 20-year-old kid that's kind of missing the charge of the excitement and the rush that I had when I was in the military as a paratrooper. And that feeling, when you exit an aircraft and your feet hit the ground and you do the perfect PLF and you walk away smiling. It's the same kind of a feeling when you clear a border customs like that and you're on the road. So on my way to Sacramento, I get there, and I had a friend in the town of Winters, which is about 50, 60 miles north of the city of Sacramento. And he was a major marijuana mover. He was getting that stuff by the bales brought to him. Anyway, he consented to take my loads, and he said, I'll distribute for you. So I didn't have to go out there and build a market at that time. I had one guy that took everything that I brought to him. And within a few days, it was all flipped cash in my hand, and I was good to go. So I remember the first week after getting back and him breaking down the keys and getting it all out there, we cleared just over $80,000. Now, bear in mind, this is 74, 75. We're living on less than $400 a month on the GI Bill. And that kind of money mesmerized my other two co-partners who ultimately I brought into the smuggling end of it, bringing their cars down and started bringing more and more loads north. Well, for the next year, we did real well. Everybody was happy. We're making more money than we'd ever seen in our lives, but we're also caught up in the rush of the lifestyle of what we're doing. And the beginning of the semblance that we thought at the time was we were becoming powerful. Of course, later in life, as I had entered the Sinaloa cartel and worked in the cocaine industry, I learned a lot about power. And I learned a lot about power's influence on a person, especially someone that doesn't have a lot of experience with it. But we'll get to that in a moment. My friend got busted, the guy in Winters. He got taken down by the feds about a year later. So all of a sudden, the business is over overnight. And you go from rags to riches and riches to rags just as fast because it's, rich. It's crooked money. And crooked money just has a way of igniting itself and disappearing into the fog. And that was a time that I met my lifelong friend, a man that I love closer than a brother. His name is Victor Mojica. And Victor had this little carniceria, if you will, called Algo Nuevo, meaning something new in English. And it was a little cafe set up by the college. And I can remember, well, going there and being a struggling, starving student. By this point, I already lost everything again. And Victor would feed me free meals. And a friendship developed. And to this day, we talk to each other every single day. And we're looking 45 years later. That's how long we've been together. And Victor, I think all of us that have been in the high level criminal industries have people that are legitimate in our life that are just as meaningful, if not more so, because they keep us focused that the world that we're living in, when you're part of a drug cartel, your world is all about staying alive, surviving, not going away for the rest of your life because of the things that you've committed just to get up the ranks of where you're at to where you become, in my case, an underboss in the Pacific Northwest at that time. Um, but getting back to the smuggling part of it, Richard, the marijuana business was hugs and handshakes. Everybody was cool. It was small time. As we were expanding and getting more, the Chowari village that I was getting my marijuana from had other clients, of course, before I got into it. So they were only able to segment up X amount of kilos to me. So we had through memo, he had a friend over in the state of Jalisco, just outside of Guadalajara, that had a ranch. And the guy that I met was actually from Sinaloa State, but was now living over there in Jalisco, and his name was Rafael Cara Quintero. And I'm sure you've heard of that name. He's the one that kidnapped DEA agent Kiki Camarena and executed him back in the mid 80s. Now we're already into this is probably 79 or 80. Forgive me, folks. I'm in my 70s. It gets a little slow bringing it back. But anyway, I met Rafa, and then I met this other guy that they nicknamed him El Chapo, and Joaquin Guzman, very very famous name. And I have a photograph. I think you saw the picture. Did I send that to you originally? Yeah.
Yep.
That was 42 years ago when that picture was taken. And El Chapo was 26 and I was 28 at the time of the photo. And he wasn't the drug lord yet or nothing like that. But I always knew with Chapo that he was going to go places because of that drive and that determination and the ruthlessness within his soul that is necessary to do and to achieve the goals that he ultimately acquired, becoming the largest drug dealer in the world. He passed Don Pablo Escobar. He passed everybody, the Ochoas, all of them. And I, over the years, had observed and monitored his growth. And I remember the last time I saw Chapo was I think it was in '93. There was a wedding in Culiacan that I flew down to go to with my wife. And I remember sitting at the table of bosses, and my wife was sitting across the plaza with the other women that were married to some of the cartel guys. We're now in cartel time. And I remember Los Tigres de la Norte was the famous Mexican band playing at this wedding. This is a very rich and powerful drug lord out of Culiacan, and his daughter was the one that was being married that day. So if you can visualize a small plaza, buildings on all three sides except the entry area, we were on one side, the wives and family members on the other at their tables, and then the table of the husband and wife to be, and then their parents sat. So there were 6 people at that table, and of course bodyguards standing behind him with AK-47 rifles in play. All of a sudden, the band stops and these 2 soldiers come walking in, and they've got their weapons at the ready, and they're scanning everybody. And then a few more poured in, and then a couple of minutes later, El Chapo walked in. Now, bear in mind, brother, this is 1993. He's now a drug lord and has been a drug lord for some years. But I remember he walks up to the wedded table, and he presents them with a gift and embraces them, embraces the father that was in the drug business working for the Sinaloa cartel at that time. And then he came over to the table of bosses. And as he's coming by and he's shaking hands, one of the guys that I was sitting with, I'm not going to share their names with anybody. They're still protected. He said, "This is our good friend, Bigotas, from the Pacific Northwest. He represents us up there." And then Chapo turns and he's looking at me, and I see the recognition coming to his eyes, and he goes, "I remember you. I remember you." And he reaches across and he shakes my hand and he pulls me into him and he gives me this really big hug. And he's all happy that I'm, working for his organization. And I remember the other bosses, they're sitting there, and I never bragged about knowing Chapo. I kind of kept all of that stuff to myself and never let many people know the contacts that I had down there. But when they saw that Chapo had a childhood relationship with me, it literally changed everything in the blink of that eye. And Anyway, Chapo went down the line and shook his hands and visited for a few minutes. He raised a toast, toasted the couple, and then he departed. He was gone. And yeah, it was pretty amazing. But what really, it cost me so much, Richard, because I remember my wife looking across that plaza. And bear in mind, my wife knew that I did something, but she never knew. I never talked about my business, never exposed it. But I literally watched the love leave my wife's eyes that day. That's what ended us. And they were talking to me about my son. At that time, he was just a baby, but they're saying, when he gets about 12, 13, send him on down here. We'll put him in school and we'll start getting him groomed and trained to come into the family business, so to speak. Well, she overheard that and she said, I will kill you if you do that to our child or you attempt to do that. And her message was so meaningful and so strong and so demanding that I don't consider those type of thoughts that I got it. Anyway, the marriage was never the same. And a few months later, I had a small amount of cocaine taken off in Seattle. It was 38 kilos. I had just given the guy 40 kilos on an 80-kilo coke deal I was doing. And he got arrested just outside of the U District in downtown Seattle with it. Now, bear in mind, this is 1992, and cocaine had only been coming up in that area in quantity weight for probably about a year. And I'm getting 250 to 350 kilos at a time. Those were the standard weight load weights, quarter of a ton, third of a ton. And the majority of the cocaine that I was moving at that time, being operational, was up in Vancouver, Canada. We had people up there that were affiliated with the Russian mafia. We had the Asian community, and one of the biker communities were tied into us. But that lousy 38 kilos, that was what started Operation Northern Exposure, which created the multitask agency formed by the federal government. And the reason they did that was, as you know, and probably understand, the kilos that come from these countries, they have different labels on them. Like in Durango, the Alacron or Scorpion was stamped on ours, or it would say USA, or it would have a lot number like 236 or 182 or things to this nature. There was always different logos put on them. But the one that they really watched out for was the soccer ball. The soccer ball meant that it was coming out of Medellin, Colombia, and it was under the control of Don Pablo Escobar. And that was the trigger. Oh, excuse me, not 93. It was 1991 when that happened. So anyway, the Operation Northern Exposure was formed. It didn't take him too many months before they figured out who Hal Bradley was and realized that I was a drug kingpin operating in the Pacific Northwest. Living in a small town called Granite Falls, Washington. I had an antique store, had a gas station. My associate Victor and I had 47 rental properties together up there. We were just doing amazing. All this is public record. It's Snohomish County records. It's easy to verify. And I hit a point. I married Jerry Ellen, and we got pregnant with my first child. And after his birth, I remember watching him crawling across the floor in the front room with the bottle hanging out of his mouth. And I was due to go down to Culiacan and negotiate. I was trying to pick up an additional 600 kilos. I had an order for it. And I remember going down there, but during the flight down to Culiacan, I had made the decision that my time was over in the drug business. So I went down there, I sat with my compadres, and we had the discussion, and everybody was no problem, hugs and handshakes. Take the network that you've got going on in the Pacific Northwest. We'll send some people up. We'll go ahead and have you, insert them into the different and various stages, everything from transportation routes, safe houses, market site distribution points, where we would stash and store multi-millions of dollars in product, on and on and on. There's a lot involved in running an industry like that and building an industry like that. And the client base especially, because nobody's meeting nobody at these points. We're dealing in millions of dollars. You got to keep the number of contact and people that have a knowledge of whatever facet that they're involved with, just to that immediate minimal area for our own self-preservation. So I'm happy with it. I give them all hugs and handshakes, jump on the flight back to SeaTac, and I get home and I see a white van sitting in my driveway, and there's two soldados sitting in the front, and they had a third of a ton of cocaine in it. And the guy actually told me, he says, "You didn't really think you were gonna just walk away from this, Vato. You got to, you're in. You got to stay with this." So because I was an underboss and had that status of authority by then, I was able to tell them, "Listen, we're heated up at the feds up here. Get that the hell out of here." That's why I was down there in the first place. And I got the load out of there. And the following morning, contacted an attorney that was a friend of our family, who knew probably the most powerful attorney in the Pacific Northwest, a guy named Murray Gooderson of Colt Gooderson and Greater. And they arranged for me to come in and see him. And I says, "I want to surrender myself to the U.S. Attorney's Office and offer my services to take down the Pacific Northwest faction."
Now, now hold on, because I come from a big Italian family.
Yes.
And some of our family are good fellas. I'm going to put it that way.
Sure.
And we know that blood in, blood out. Like Michael Franchese says, almost nobody walks away from the life. So what was it like trying to sleep at night, and this is all going through your head, and you knowing that it's very rare for anybody to walk away from the life? So what was that like? And then knowing, okay, well, now I'm going to turn on the people that I've been supporting for the last 10 or 15 years.
Very good question. My decision was made by the refusal to give me my life. And if you're going to take on something like a cartel or an Italian mafia family or whatever the case may be that you're with, you better have a bigger baseball bat, because death is imminent. And death in the world that I come from doesn't happen rapidly. It takes days to kill a person if you become a true enemy of them. And to this day, I have a $100,000 contract on my head from there, but 2 generations have passed since then, and I don't worry about it. I got hit in 2020. I was found and left for dead. And that's a whole other part of the story. But the bottom line is this. I had mixed emotions about all because of my love. Growing up in childhood with these people, this was my world and my environment. And what really, really got me was the love and hugs and handshakes, and we're all family and la 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 la. And I was willing to protect that. I was more than happy to walk away and take my hit. Prior to that, 86 to 89, I was in Folsom Prison, California. My number, for those that want to look it up, is D64038. I kept my mouth shut, did my 3-year sentence, always maintained that honor. And when I walked out of there, the agreement was that I wasn't going to rebuild the cocaine life and go back into that world again. So I moved back to Seattle, Washington. Folsom Prison is just outside of Sacramento. And started within a couple months, I was relocated. They gave my wife and I round trip tickets and $5,000 in cash and had us go down to Las Vegas, where I was told, well, guess what? You're going to reactivate what you have tried to walk away from. And that's that world. That's just the way it is. So after leaving Culiacan, the night that I had made the decision, that decision was made by looking at a child crawling across the front room floor. The load was gone, so I wasn't worried about them securing a third of a ton of freaking cocaine that I would have been conspired to in that moment. And I would have lost a lot of bargaining measures. I'm very, very versed. We had a lieutenant in the narcotics force in Seattle, Washington on my payroll. He'd been with me about 1.5 years. So I had intel coming in after Operation Northern Exposure was created. At that point that I knew I was under the eye of the Department of Justice. So I also knew I had a bargaining chip. But like I said, brother, when the decision was made to break away from the cartel, being a man who had already been through prison, kept his mouth shut, always honored the code, always honored that. But they weren't honoring my code. They weren't allowing me to have that opportunity, if you will, to transition my life and raise my family. Hell, I was wealthy at that time. I had all the properties and businesses, and I just didn't need to do the risk, and I didn't want to do the risk anymore. So I walked into the U.S. Attorney's office. I was not arrested that day. What they did was have my attorney and I sit in this large conference room. And a few hours later, all of these agency people start filtering in. And I mean, it was an alphabet soup of agencies: ATF, DEA, US Customs. I'm sure the CIA was there. I've worked with them later, but I can't even remember all of them. IRS, everybody was there. And everybody knew who I was. And they were kind of angry because they were wanting to take me down. But when they heard the proposal, I said, I'll help you get out the Pacific Northwest faction. And I said, but I'm taking on a cartel. And when you make a decision as life-changing as that, as you know, with your experience and knowledge of the Italian mafia organizations and stuff, once you cross that line, death awaits. It simply does. But I knew that going into it. So right away, they placed my family into protective care. I went operational, and for the next 19 months, I severely gutted the Pacific Northwest faction of the Sinaloa cartel's market up there. Now, we controlled that market and almost in its entirety. I remember the Cubans trying to come into Seattle and threatening some of my people who were moving kilos for me at that time. They brought the threat to me. I had a powwow with one of the guys in the Cuban cartel, if you will. And I made a call to Sinaloa. A crew comes up, and within a few days, there's not a Cuban left in the Pacific Northwest area. I mean, I had that capability and used that capability to maintain the organization that I was building for them and myself, and to virtually eliminate any threats or competition that would come our way.
All right, now I got another question, because when you're a part of that life,
Yes.
everybody, every Christmas, every holiday, it's the same 5 or 10 people that hang out together. You vacation together. It's kind of like Goodfellas. You vacation together, you eat dinner together, you do everything together. But now all of a sudden it's just Hal, his wife, and his kid. How did that loneliness hit you?
Not really, because my friends were all located in a foreign country. I'm the one that built it up here for them. I may have been blonde bear, but they said, aquí en su corazón vive la sangre de la ciudad. In your heart pumps the blood of a village. I was a child down there. So my childhood upbringing and understanding of the culture and understanding of the commitment and the loyalty, most importantly, the loyalty, that was not an easy choice, Richard, walking in and knowing I was going to be going after some of the people that I grew up with in childhood. But the choice was made by the people that were not going to let me go. They would not allow me that. And I couldn't believe it. I believed in my heart and soul that, yeah, okay, I did mine. I built it, turn it over to them, no problem. It just doesn't work that way. For one, I'm older in life now. This is 40 years later, and I realize the fact that I had so much knowledge. And by now, the people are becoming famous. They're becoming media worthy, if you will. So you're a potential threat to that, and the threat needs to be eliminated. And that's what happened.
Okay.
Anyway, I was facing a mandatory life sentence because of being under the Kingpin statute at that time. And the deal was with the AUSA was that I could work down from that, and we would settle after we saw what I had done. Well, I did everything I said I would do. And I remember the day of sentencing, the U.S. attorney and all these agents stood up and said, man, this guy, he put his life out there. He really did everything that he agreed to do, and then some. And they recommended that I got 8 years in federal prison, which was basically a slap on the wrist compared to the magnitude of the industry that I had built in the Northwest. So the judge was compliant with that. They sentenced me to 8 years. And then, get this, the judge gives me 30 days to get my affairs in order, say goodbye to my wife and kids, which now the marriage is on the rocks and pretty much over. But I had that opportunity, and that's very rare. But that's the respect that I had earned as a result of sticking to my commitment. And I didn't run around and get myself arrested and decide to go tell on all the boys and girls in my neighborhood to cut a deal with the feds. I wasn't arrested. I walked in with sheer focus and determination to take down the very cartel that wasn't allowing me to walk away and build the life that I was now ready to enter into. So I remember I'm in a holding cell awaiting Con Air flight to Inglewood, Colorado, which is right next door to ADX Florence. And at that time, this is 1994, October, November, they had the opening ceremony of ADX Florence going on when I arrived in Inglewood. We could go in the yard out back and you could look up on the hill and see Florence. And that's where Chapo is today. And, it's known as the Alcatraz of America, or the Alcatraz of Colorado, excuse me. Anyway, time goes on. My liver started shutting down. I was terminally ill. So I was flown to Springfield, Missouri. And when I got to Springfield, they asked me if I wanted to volunteer for an experimental drug. And this is called alpha interferon 2B. And I said, well, hell, I'm going to be dead in 2 or 3 months. I might as well try it. And here I am 30 years later, still alive and well. But what happened was, by this point, now that I'm in federal prison, my life slows down. And I'm able to start pursuing other goals and other interests. And October 19th, 1993, at about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was in a holding cell. My wife had just dropped off divorce papers. I had a contract on my life. I'd just come out of court. And I dropped to my knees and I said, God, I can't take any more. I just can't take another breath of this. And an inmate walked in and he knelt down on one side and put a hand on my shoulder and he started praying for me. Moments later, another inmate walked in on the other side of me, Richard, put a hand on my shoulder and started praying for me. And in that moment, I felt, God, I can't even describe it to this day, but it was like something broke within inside of me, and the anger and the frustration and the pain and the resentment and all of those negative particles of my life fell. They just fell away. They were gone. Instead, I was full of this unspeakable joy and this heartfelt desire to learn more about what's bringing this joy to me. And that was when I started my seminarial studies, when I landed in Inglewood, later to Springfield, Missouri. And I graduated seminary. I was doing Assemblies of God studies. That's who I was with at the time. Became ordained while I was in federal prison. And there was this guy named Johnny Gambino of the Gambino crime family.
Yep.
And Giovanni, I used to play bocce ball with him out there on the yards and got to know all the Italian guys. So when you talk about the Italian mafia, yeah, I get it, because I know how they, what can we do for this favor you do for us type of stuff. It was really an experience. But anyway, they threw a big, they did like a yard feast for me, because these guys knew that I wasn't some Bible thumper hiding behind a book. People could see the transformation of me, the conversion, and they could tell that I really, truly was dedicated. And prisoners honor that. So anyway, during that time, as I'm taking my chemo treatments and going through the process of recovering from a failing liver, I signed up and became a member of the hospice organization, which there were only 11 of us at the time that I went through it. But we were trained to take other prisoners through the actual dying process. Bear in mind, I'm at Springfield Medical Center for Federal Prisoners. And once I got certified and became a hospice counselor for the next 2 years, my seminarial studies were all done in those dying rooms. That was my university. And I can remember how humbling it was. I took 24 prisoners through the dying process at the same time that I was just cramming like crazy and getting my studies done. And I also worked in the education department. Once I got transferred to Leavenworth, that job carried over in helping guys get their GEDs. And so now I'm on a self-help, self-recovery journey that is also extreme. Just like the lifestyle that I had left as a high-level cocaine smuggler and later trafficker, I become this man of God and the servant to humankind that was, I just couldn't satisfy it. It was stronger and stronger by the day. My calling was very, very clear. And, as a high-level narcotics trafficker, I wasn't selling dime bags out on the streets. So I didn't really understand the concept of the damage I was doing. I was moving throughout the year a few tons of cocaine a year, and I was so away from that and departed. The people, Richard, in my life were people that were very successful in business or successful in organized crime. They were people that were not sitting on the street scraping the next $10 bill together to get another fix slammed in their arm. But that's where my calling came. When I got released in October 19th, 1994, I was flown back to Seattle. I had already been in touch with Bishop LaFall and his wife, And they came to the halfway house and they met me there. And the following day got me released to go to the church. And February 3rd of 1999, I was formally ordained under their ordination, and to this day still carry the ordination title through that organization. So that's 26 years I've been with the same society. But get this, I'm in the halfway house. I get approached by the Department of Justice. Well, I had already been approached in federal prison. I should back that up a bit. Asked if I would have an interest in serving my country as a contractor. Brought back to court because I said yes. Brought back to court. Walked out of prison within a couple of weeks to this halfway house. They still wanted to process me through the program. So in the future, anybody running backgrounds on me or something, it would appear normal. Like I did a writ of habeas corpus, filed that, and I won my battle. And that's the excuse for why I was released. And paperwork was doctored up to look like that. So anyway, they come to the halfway house and we get me back before the judge, and immediately within a few weeks, and I don't know if I sent you the document or not, but it was me heading to Costa Rica, going down on a 500 kilo coke deal. But I have all of this. If your audience ever needs to see anything, I can verify this entire story. But here I am, fresh out of prison, going down to go do 500 kilo coke deal in Costa Rica. And that's how it began, boy. I mean, from that point on, I hit the streets, ultimately completing 17 years in undercover operations in multiple countries. I've been kidnapped once. I was captured in an undisclosed country in Central America back in 2002. I was rescued from captivity with another agent. We were 7 weeks before we were found, and they came in and extracted us. And I don't really want to talk about it too much, but it's just part of the journey. Anyway, I got out of it in 2018. I remember I was down there qualifying a new target in the city of Ciudad Obregón, Sonora State, northern Mexico. Pilot that was reputedly flying heroin into the United States. I had an opportunity to insert myself into that group and do a confirmation check on the guy, and found out it was invalidated. But what happened was that was the same weekend they were moving Chapo to the United States, and the Sinaloa cartel blew into a whole bunch of different factions. Yep. And the operative, we all remember the history of it. The operatives were in Ciudad Obregón, there was the city I was at. They were killing people on the same block in the house that I was at. And I hid for 2 days in that house. And then they put me in the trunk of a car, drove me through a cartel checkpoint outside of the city, and another one as we were heading over to the Ciudad Obregón International Airport to get me the hell out of the area. They got me in there, escorted me right onto the plane itself. I landed in Tijuana, where I had a team waiting for me on the U.S. side in San Ysidro. Walked across, cleared customs, walked right on through, got picked up by the team. That night, I was debriefed half the damn night, going through everything about the information, ultimately invalidating the guy. He wasn't a rich target that we thought. And the following morning, I just told him, guys, I'm 65 years old. I'm just too old. I can't do this anymore. And I rescinded my contract. Now, bear in mind, I'm not some CI working off a case. I'm a contractor. I can quit any damn time I want. But I did give them 17 years undercover, and we accomplished amazing things in those years. And I do feel such a privilege and honor to have worked with so many people in the CIA, the DEA, U.S. Customs, Special Forces teams of the military, all the different countries I would go into where I would have that cover in my back. And about my action adventure novels, Richard. I've written 11 of them. And every one of my books are dedicated to people that are affiliated with law enforcement in that world, and just the unmistakable memories that will forever, some of them haunt me. Some of them I'm honored that I was able to participate in some of the work that we did, and some of it's still classified and I don't talk about it.
All right, so let me ask you, because, a lot of my audience are veterans, first responders.
Yes.
And there comes a time when we actually have to hang up our uniform, hang up our gun belt for the last time.
Yes.
And then we have to reimagine and reinvent our lives. So now you've had so many reinventions, but now you're 65 years old, and there comes a time to reinvent and reimagine again. Take us through that.
That's a good point, brother. For one, my love for the veterans is immeasurable. You know, every one of us took an oath of office to that office. We took an oath to the Constitution of the United States. And even when we retire from the military, that oath never leaves any of us.
Yep.
It has no expiration date, my brother. But my thing, once I had, in 2018, as I told you, and I'd stepped out of it, I was focusing very, very hard in outreach services at this time, working with a lot of homeless vets, being able to give them opportunities to find other resources, other directives. You know, I have a doctorate now. I got that in 2004. And during the time that I was operational undercover, also at that time, I was pastoring a church. I was working in outreach services. So I had multiple lives going on at the same exact time. And but nothing has ever been stronger than the commitment to serve, to say I'm sorry, and to pay back the world to the last breath I take. But working with veterans is significant because I get to hear the whys, the pros and cons. Of course, we all know successful veterans that came out. They were career oriented from day one, but we also know the veterans that have advanced PTSD as a result of surviving combat related experiences or whatever. So my message to the veteran community is, one, I started going to the VA 51 years ago when it wasn't at all like it is today. And the resources are absolutely amazing. Now I understand we've had recent cutbacks, which we have. My doctor told me that scheduling appointments now can be set back as much as a month because of lack of certain manpower in the VA system. And I'm really upset about that, because if you took that oath that we all took, you have a right to your medical, your psychological, and your occupational privileges, if you will, that you earned. But I'm not going to get into politics today. I'm not interested in doing that. I'm interested in recognizing.
Me either, brother. I'm not either. So.
Yeah.
But I also know that nobody is coming to save us. And
no.
we actually have to have a part in our own recovery.
Well, you know, I'm so glad you brought up the veteran thing. Again, I'd like to go back to that because this is very important to any of us that have served. And we see what so many of them are confronted with now. But what they do have, Richard, that's different than my era. I was in during the Vietnam War. They didn't have the PTSD trained people qualified working in the VA facilities, which I'm telling all of you brothers and sisters out there right now that are struggling, take advantage of the social ethics of the Veterans Administration. That hasn't all been cut away yet. It's just been hampered, but it's still there. And there is occupational abilities that are just fabulous for veterans. And they're still there. With PTSD, all of you that are like myself, I've been a PTSD patient for decades. And the transitioning that I've seen and the benefit as a result of taking advantage of those services is highly significant to where you can look in your later years of life and have some kind of a self-recovery and self-restitution to what you've gone through and survived, and to make peace with it. But not only, like Richard and I, we have backgrounds where we have been through things, but now with age of life, we have wisdom to attach to our academics and our military training. And what we can do is now apply in a greater sense humanitarian goals. And that's exactly what Richard and I both do. And Pete Turner, by the way. Yep. We're all there. We're all veterans. We're all there. But I got to tell you, Richard, the greatest joys of my life comes from when God gets the glory and people don't recognize our face. They don't see us. All they see in the middle of the night is somebody representing God instead. And that's the major component to growing and maturing and serving God and his kingdom, is in the knowing that you're just one segment, one small vessel of many that, especially in these particular times in history, need to be out there and be deeply involved. When I was going through my seminary years, it took me 13 years to get my doctorate. And when I was going through all of that, I remember eschatology was my secondary study. My primary, my doctorate's in Christian pastoral counseling. My secondary was eschatology, the understanding of the end of days and identifying with the signs, symptoms, all the things that we start seeing generating and amassing now, even to the rebirthing of the second red heifer that just happened last year in Israel, the third blood moon, all of these things that are coming into play that were prophetically written over 2,000 years ago. for this exact time, the time we're in today. And it's pretty awe-inspiring, but it can also be depressing, and it can also be kind of frightening if you don't have an understanding of some of the signs, symptoms, the all the lies and the deceit that's going on with the media nowadays, people that are in power that are still deceiving so many people in so many ways. But you can't fight all of those battles. All you can do is what Jesus told us to do. He said, be the example.
Yeah.
Go forth to love one another as I have loved you. When I'm guest preaching in churches, that is my mission and ministry every single time, is to stand up before an audience and say, why do we complicate the basic requirement to love one another as God loved us? There's only 2 commandments Jesus gave us. One was to love God above all things, which we do, and the other is to love each other, which we complicate. It's crazy. And look at you and I, when we're emailing each other, Richard, it's always, I love you, brother. God bless you, brother. And we mean it. We feel it. We know that this is exactly what we're trying to show by example.
So what made you start a podcast? Well, how did that come all about?
Well, I as you know, I've been an author for a number of years now, and I wanted to start reaching a community, but not only sharing my story, but sharing the victory stories of other people. And I had been on Pete Turner's show a couple times, and I brought up the idea to Pete. Now, Victor Mojica is my agent under contract and investor. He's the one that bankrolled the operations to get this going, all of my publications. As you know, we have a package and 2 movie producers working right now, shopping to put together the funding to create a motion picture of my life. Hopefully later the TV series, documentary, blah, blah, blah. But the point is, I wanted other people's stories to be brought out, not just mine. That's why my show is called The Crisis Victory Show. And I want to celebrate their successes, not mine, but theirs. And let their stories be told, and to be an example that you may be sitting in a crack house and you may have that rig slammed in your arm and you've given up all hope and all possibility. But here's a guy on my show that just went through that same thing 5 or 6 years ago. Why don't you listen to what he has to say? That's the motivational factor behind the Crisis Victory Show. So that was a good. That was a good question.
And I was so grateful to be on that show.
Yeah.
It actually just came out, and I'm going to be promoting it today. As a matter of fact.
Oh, love it. You were such a great interview, Richard. Oh my God, I loved it talking because, like me, we are 100% in when it comes to the path with Jesus Christ. 100%. Nothing can ever persuade us or dissuade us from our belief, our faith, and our desire to serve. And, coming on your show today was an absolute honor because, as you know, yesterday we were even in touch about getting ready for today. And I couldn't. This is probably one of the very favorite podcast shows that I've looked forward to because you and I have such a love for each other and admiration for the God that we serve and the ability to take it to the multitudes. You were talking about Facebook and Instagram and X and all these other places that will be seeing the show. Identical. I have the same thing with my show. It goes out to the multitudes. The whole world can reach out and see the messages that our guests are delivering. By the way, last week's guest you had was pretty amazing. But anyway, getting back to our interview. I can't thank you enough for letting us share the word. And any of you out there that are caught up in that drug world at that type of a level or whatever, let me tell you, it is scary to sit there and put your thumbs up to an organization that may have thousands of people involved, and especially having spent 15 years of my life in it, witnessing executions ever since childhood and seeing people tortured and seeing people disappeared and driving under bodies hanging off overpasses. I remember these things very, very well, watching people get lit on fire and all the lessons learned. And in 2020, the night of June 6th, June 7th, when they found me, I got hit out back of my house here and I was left for dead. And I thought I was dying. I was stabbed multiple times. And I remember him releasing his grip on me as I was fading into unconsciousness. And I thought that was my final moments on earth. And I remember the absolute joy and the peace. And there was no fear. There was no feeling the pain. There was nothing, Richard. I was ready to go. And after I survived that, and I came out of a 1.5-day coma at the hospital here in the town I live in, I remember right away that I didn't see any bodyguards or police or anybody protecting me. And I just got hit by a cartel. And I got a hold of a friend of mine, and he came down and he swooped me up and brought me back to my residence, which has security. And about 2 years later, I had been framed on a heroin thing. They were trying to discredit me and ruin my life. And of course, I was found not guilty and everything went well. But Pat Grady, that's his name. He was with me for over 40 years, built the cocaine industry with me, did 26 years in federal prison because he was a man who would keep his mouth shut. And his option was to take me down, but he knew that was a death sentence for his whole family if he did. But the point I'm making is this: Pat sacrificed himself for me. And in 2022, he was found dead in his house. And that was 2 days after we walked out of my attorney's office. We left on a Friday. They found him on a Sunday. And what had happened is they had rushed into his house, held him down, shot him full of fentanyl, and killed him on the spot. And this was a Vietnam veteran, 101st Airborne, North Highlands, 1966, 67, an absolute war hero and brother that I have loved for close to a half a century. Gone forever. But he was willing to do whatever it took. When I also got hit about another veteran I want to share with you, I'm just going to call him Brother Bob. That's how I want. And if you go through my photos, you'll see both of us wearing the survivor hats. He was also captured on foreign soil in the service of our country. And Brother Bob committed suicide. I lost him November before last. And I remember him calling me on the phone and telling me his decision. He says, "Don't come by and do last rites. I'll see you on the other side, brother. I love you. I just wanted to say goodbye." A few hours later, he was found. So we lose 22 veterans a day on the average, Richard, to veteran suicide. This is ridiculous. It's too high of a number. And what we need to do is people like you and I, brother, that have these shows, we need to get that word out. Brothers and sisters, if you're dealing with PTSD, and I'm talking about law enforcement and firefighters and paramedics and all of us in the community of serving humankind, reach out, get help. 12 months ago, I almost took my own life. I know about it. I got so damn tired of waking up in the middle of the night with that damn jungle in my head and having the memories of when they came in and what erupted when they rescued me and Manny, the agent that was captured with me. 7 weeks in captivity, and every day we thought we were going to be killed that day. And something happens to the mind at that point. But what you got to do is you got to get help. And when I was walking down the hallway to end my life just 12 months ago, I hit the VA suicide hotline. Within minutes, they had a doctor on that phone with me. And because of our discipline from being in the military, it's kind of like listening to your chain of command. That same sense came into play. And I did a few months of counseling. And at that point, I didn't need it anymore. But I'm also under medication for it. My PTSD was deemed advanced. So they keep an eye.
And guys and girls, if you're watching this and you're struggling right now, you can always dial 988 and they will get you help now. So if you're struggling, dial 988 if you're struggling right now.
And listen to our stories, every one of you out there, because we love our veteran family more than you could possibly imagine. What you mean to me, what you mean to Richard, what you mean to Pete Turner of the Break It Down show. All three of us are veterans that have served outside the wire. We have a love for our veteran community, and I'm here to tell you here now. Brother Richard, can you repeat that number again, please?
You can dial pound 988, and they will put you in touch with a counselor now.
Yeah, that's what they did with me. Now it was just immediate.
Yep.
Okay. Well, listen, brother, I'm pretty well good for the day. I don't think of anything else I want to add because I don't want to take from anything we've tried to message.
So, but then how do we get in your ecosystem? How do we find your books? How do we find your podcast? How do we get in touch with you?
Thank you for that, brother. My books are under lowercase drhalbradley.com. That takes you to my Amazon site. My show is crisisvictory.com. That'll take you right to my show site. And I welcome each and every one of you to go to both of those sites. The books are very important to me because these books are reflecting the horrors of undercover operations and what people pursue with regard to surviving the cartel world, the victims out there. I talk about human trafficking cases I've worked. I talk about international drug trafficking, contract killers, and all of the bad things. But the goodness that's done through the people that sit and serve each and every one of you each and every day. And we need to recognize and honor them, because these young people are absolutely, God, they just take my heart, Richard, and you understand all of that. You know why. They're willing to die for that oath that we took.
Yep.
But in closing on your show today, Richard, I want to say I ask God to bless you and your family. I reach out to God to bless your listeners and the community. And as Richard said earlier, those of you that are veterans in struggle and strife, please don't hesitate to reach out to the numbers that are provided. You can go right to Google, hit the little microphone thing, and say whatever it is that you need, and it'll pop up on your screen.
Yep.
And turn to fellow veterans. We all have a community of understanding. If you're struggling out on that sidewalk, on that street, if you're in this area, I've probably talked to you. But you know what? You're loved, you're respected, you're honored, and you are treated and deserve to be treated with such dignity. So don't look down on yourself if you're in a moment of disparity, if you're in an environment less satisfying than what you have been seeking or expected when you first got out of the military. Understand, someone will be there to pick you up. You just have to reach out and let them know.
I love it. Now, Doc, that's normally the last question that I ask, but because it's you, I got one last question. I had one of the Iron Chefs on. His name is Simon Majumdar. And he said since COVID happened, we've lost over 100,000 restaurants in the United States. We got people driving Uber, driving DoorDash, just trying to make a living. So if I ask somebody to do something in 24 hours, I mean, in 7 days, they're never going to get to it. But if I ask somebody to do something in the next 24 hours, they're more likely to take that step. So if there's somebody right now struggling with their faith, what can they do in the next 24 hours to find some peace and get closer to him again?
I love that, brother. Understand, he said, for so persecuted they the prophets which came before you. We are certainly under spiritual warfare and under persecution right now, which tends to lead people to having doubt or questioning choices that they're making, or even to their belief structures. What you've got to do is you've got to be aligned with your inner faith. You've got to believe that what you believe in, if you truly follow Christ and you truly believe Christ, he will open up the doors to that which you are seeking, because it's his glory, not our glory. So I say to each and every one of you out there that may be questioning your faith and wavering it, this is that time. This is that time in your life right now when the book of Acts talks about the pouring out of the Spirit upon the flesh of the world. Well, where you have a balance of goodness, you also have a balance of evil that combats the goodness. And a lot of these questions you have that are going through your minds is part of the great delusion. It's part of the deception that we were warned about and told about. And the other thing is to find people that are like-minded. If you are a believer and a follower, find another believer and a follower. Richard and I, we were talking earlier on the show today about veterans. If you're a veteran and struggling in strife, find another veteran. It's not that hard. And Richard, have you ever found a single veteran that didn't want to talk to another veteran?
Never.
Me neither. It's just our bond. Well, the same thing falls in faith. And I just strongly encourage each and every one of you to trust that which you feel is true and right that's within yourself. Trust it. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understandings. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct that path. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, right there. And with that, I'd like to close, brother, because that's the message.
I love it. And now, guys, as you know, the way I end my show every week is every morning we wake up, we get a choice. We can either be a victim or we can be a victor. And guys, if you listen to my show, you're no longer victims of your past. You're victors of your present and your future. Thank you guys for always showing up. We love you. Hal, Doc, I love you, brother.
I love you too, Richard.
Pete Turner, I love you, my friend. Thank
Hey,
you for
Pete.
you do. I love you, brother, and have an amazing week. And I'm going to be promoting our episode coming up later today.
I'm excited to see it, brother. Thanks, Richard, for having me on your show. God bless you, my friend.
All right, brother. Be good.
You too, sir.